Okay, I'm a bit delayed in posting this, but this video is all about Fancy's birth. So she gave birth on February 15th, and this was her first time giving birth. Just to recap on Fancy, Fancy was born here. So Fancy is Candy's daughter, and she was born in July of 2022. So on the day that Fancy gave birth, I noticed at about 4:30 she seemed a little different. She was kind of tucked back in the outdoor shelter, which is a little bit unusual. And then at sunset, I tucked everyone into the barn. We usually tuck everyone in at night. And so when I tucked everyone into the barn, I actually left the barn light on because I thought Fancy might be kind of close to labor. And so I figured, let's just keep the lights on. That way we don't shut the lights off, and then, it would be a little bit more difficult to see. So we actually had someone over here that evening for dinner. So I came in and cooked dinner, and then I went back out at about 7:30. I had noticed, I was watching her while I was cooking, I was watching her on the camera, and it seemed like she was readying for labor. She wasn't making any noises, but I noticed kind of her tail, stretched up. And because she was behaving differently earlier, I just had assumed she was kind of close. So pretty much right when I went out there at about 7:30, we immediately saw something. At first I thought it was a hoof. It was white, but it didn't look like a hoof. And then I realized I'm pretty sure it was her mucus plug. From about 7:30 to like 7:45, she was mostly quiet pushing. They were really effortful pushes, but she wasn't making a ton of noise. And then at about 7:45, she started vocalizing quite a bit. And we saw the first signs of a sac and a kid. As Fancy kept pushing, we would see more and more of the kid, and the kid seemed very large. And he was in really good position, so he had, we could see his face and two hooves, so he was in great positioning, but he did seem quite large. And I remember Josh saying to me, why why is there so much goat out and yet there's so much goat still inside? And so it just seemed like a pretty big kid. So at about 8:09, the first kid was born, and he was a buckling, a very large buckling. So as I watched, I kind of thought, oh, maybe it'll just be the one because he was just so big. But then at 8:17, so about 8 minutes after the first kid was born, she had her first contraction for the next kid. And that kid came very quickly. So 8:17 was, you know, her first contraction, and that next kid was born at 8:20. So from the first kid to the second kid, there were 11 minutes in between. And this second kid came so quickly, I didn't realize it at the time, but she was breech. So she came out back feet first and just slid out. And so this was a little dueling. And she was a bit smaller than the buckling. And she wasn't necessarily, you know, very small for a baby goat, but next to her brother, she looked quite a bit smaller because her brother was so much bigger. So this was the first time that we had such a size discrepancy between siblings. Usually they're pretty much, you know, right on par, but the buckling was a little bit bigger and the dueling was a little bit smaller. So they looked, you know, quite a bit different. And so both kids were healthy, they were active, they were both up and nursing in no time. So we didn't spend too much time in there. You know, we usually just wait and make sure that the kids are up and nursing. And then we either watch in the barn or sometimes we watch on the camera to make sure the placenta is passing okay. And this is kind of interesting to note. I made a note of it mostly like for myself so I could remember. But we've never kidded this early in the year before. And our girls just came into heat earlier than normal in the fall, and so this is when we kidded. While Fancy was giving birth, it was about 30 degrees, and then the overnight temperature was 21, and that, I think that was the lowest we've ever had, like the night that kids were born. And anyway, they did fine. We haven't ever had to use heat lamps in the barn or anything like that, and we do raise Alpines, but anyway, I just wanted to note that because I was a little worried about it being so cold, but they did totally fine. So that sums up Fancy's birth. So she had the two kids. We named the buckling Rogue, and we named the little dueling Rosebud, and they're doing great. So thanks for watching. I have one more goat kidding video to share, and that is our sweet goat Penny. And her birth was very different, and it was the first birth that was a bit tricky. So I don't have a lot of footage, but I would really like to share about it because it was a big learning lesson for us and just a different experience. More to come on that. And I also have some really good footage from Wilma, our Kuni Kuni, from her birth. So I hope to get that video up here soon.